The unexpected request. It was a sunny afternoon in the bustling neighborhood of Lagos when Nkechi, a young and vibrant woman in her second trimester of pregnancy, called her mother-in-law, Mama Chinyere, to her home. Mama Chinyere, a stern but traditional woman in her late 50s, had always been very particular about household duties. She was known for her pride in maintaining order and respect in the family, especially with her daughter-in-law. But today, Nkechi had something unusual in mind. With a calm smile, she handed over a small pile of neatly folded underwear and said, "Mama Chinyere, could you help me wash these? I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed today." Mama Chinyere's eyebrows shot up in surprise. She had been the one who raised her son, Kelechi, and had always expected respect and decorum. The idea of washing her daughter-in-law's personal garments felt unusual, unthinkable, even. But she couldn't refuse outright, not in front of Nkechi. As she reluctantly took the clothing, she wondered silently, why would a pregnant woman ask her mother-in-law to do something so personal? Little did she know, Nkechi's request was not born from laziness or disrespect. It was part of a plan that would leave everyone in the household stunned. Mama Chinyere stood in the middle of the modest living room, holding the small pile of underwear, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. She had seen many things in her life, raised a son, endured hardships, and managed her household with pride, but nothing had prepared her for this. Washing her daughter-in-law's intimate garments felt like stepping into uncharted territory, a breach of some invisible boundary she had long respected. Nkechi, on the other hand, remained calm, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Mama Chinyere, please," she said softly, her voice almost coaxing. "I know it's unusual, but I haven't been feeling well. I trust you, and I know you understand what it means to take care of family." Mama Chinyere's pride battled her compassion. Her mind raced. What will the neighbors say? What will my son think? But when she looked at Nkechi's tired face, the woman remembered all the nights she had spent praying for her son's happiness, for the future of this new family. Slowly, she sighed and nodded. "Fine," Mama Chinyere said, trying to sound firm. "But just this once. I don't want this to become a habit, understand?" Nkechi's lips curled into a faint smile. "Of course, Mama Chinyere. I won't forget this." As Mama Chinyere filled the basin with warm water and soap, her hands trembled slightly. Each piece of fabric felt heavier than it should, each fold a strange mix of intimacy and obligation. She had spent her life caring for her family, but this was different, this was personal. She couldn't help but wonder what had led Nkechi to this. Why didn't she just ask Kelechi to help? Why me? Meanwhile, Nkechi quietly settled into the sofa, placing her hand on her belly. She felt a surge of both guilt and relief. She had planned this moment carefully. The story she had told her mother-in-law about being too tired to wash her underwear was true, but not the full truth. There was a reason she had chosen Mama Chinyere for this task, a reason that, when revealed, would shock the entire family. Outside, the sounds of the neighborhood carried on as usual, children laughing, vendors shouting, the hum of motorcycles. Inside the house, a different kind of tension had settled, one that was quiet but palpable. Mama Chinyere, meticulous and proud, scrubbed the garments with care, unaware that this simple act of washing would soon lead to a revelation that none of them could have imagined. Hours passed. The laundry was done, rinsed, and hanging to dry. Mama Chinyere, exhausted but determined to maintain dignity, placed the last piece on the line and turned to Nkechi. "There," she said, a hint of stubborn pride in her tone. "It's done. You're welcome." Nkechi smiled warmly, her eyes glinting with a secret that she could no longer keep to herself for much longer. "Thank you, Mama Chinyere. Really, thank you." Mama Chinyere narrowed her eyes, sensing there was more to the story than her daughter-in-law was saying. But she decided to leave it be for now, at least until Kelechi returned from work. Little did she know, the real reason for Nkechi's request would not only change their household dynamics but also challenge the very notions of respect, trust, and family boundaries in ways no one could have predicted. Later that evening, the house was quiet. Kelechi had not yet returned from work, leaving Mama Chinyere and Nkechi alone. The air felt heavy, filled with the unspoken tension of the afternoon. Mama Chinyere sat in the dining room, sipping her tea, her mind replaying the unusual scene of the day. Washing her daughter-in-law's underwear was not something she could easily forget, it was a personal boundary she had never imagined crossing. Nkechi, feeling the baby kick softly within her, decided the moment was right to reveal part of her secret. She approached Mama Chinyere cautiously, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice steady. Mama Chinyere, she began, there's something you need to know, something I couldn't tell you before asking for your help today. Mama Chinyere looked up, her eyes narrowing. Go on, she said, a mix of suspicion and curiosity in her tone. Nkechi took a deep breath. I didn't just ask you to wash my underwear because I was tired. I asked because I suspected something unusual about my pregnancy. I needed someone I trust to help me, someone who could see things I might not notice myself. Mama Chinyere blinked, her confusion deepening. Unusual, what do you mean? Nkechi hesitated for a moment, then spoke with quiet determination. I've been feeling strange symptoms, more than the normal pregnancy fatigue. My doctor said it could be hormonal, but I had a feeling, something else. Something unusual in my body. I wanted you to help me discreetly check if there was anything unusual in the laundry. I knew you were careful, precise, and I needed someone outside my own body to help me notice it. Mama Chinyere's mouth opened slightly. She had raised Kelechi, managed the household, and dealt with countless crises, but this was entirely unexpected. She leaned back, trying to process the gravity of what Nkechi had just confessed. You mean, you wanted me to wash your underwear to check for signs of what exactly? Mama Chinyere asked cautiously, her voice a mix of fear and curiosity. Nkechi nodded. I didn't want to alarm anyone. And I didn't want Kelechi to worry unnecessarily. I needed someone experienced, someone trustworthy, to help me make sure everything was okay before bringing it to the doctor. Mama Chinyere's hands trembled slightly. She had thought her daughter-in-law was being lazy, maybe even disrespectful, but now she realized there was a much deeper reason behind the unusual request. Her mind raced as she connected the dots. The afternoon's task, the careful handling of each garment, the quiet attentiveness, everything made sense now. For the first time, Mama Chinyere saw Nkechi in a new light, not just as her daughter-in-law, but as a mother, a woman navigating the vulnerabilities of pregnancy, and someone who had trusted her above all others. She felt a strange mix of pride, concern, and responsibility. Why didn't you tell me this from the start? Mama Chinyere asked softly, her voice less sharp, more maternal. I didn't want to scare you, Nkechi admitted. Or, Kelechi, I just needed help. I needed you. Mama Chinyere took a deep breath and finally nodded, a sense of understanding washing over her. She realized that the afternoon's unusual act had been a bridge of trust, a silent declaration that family meant more than pride or embarrassment. As the sun set outside, casting golden light across the living room, the two women shared a quiet moment of understanding. The secret was still not fully revealed, but for the first time, Mama Chinyere realized that Nkechi's request, strange as it had seemed, was a plea for help, a gesture of faith, and a sign of a bond that would grow stronger in the days to come. Little did they know, however, that the mystery behind Nkechi's pregnancy symptoms, and the reason she had asked for such a delicate favor, was far more shocking than either of them could have imagined. And when Kelechi returned home, everything was about to change. As the sky deepened into shades of orange and purple, the familiar rumble of a car approaching signaled Kelechi's return from work. Mama Chinyere straightened her posture, smoothing out the creases in her dress, while Nkechi quietly adjusted her position on the sofa, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. There was a shared tension between the two women, an unspoken understanding that the afternoon's events had altered the household dynamics. Kelechi walked in with his usual cheerful greeting. Good evening, Mama. Nkechi. His eyes lit up when he saw his wife, but then they flickered toward his mother. Something seemed different. There was a subtle shift in the air he couldn't quite place. Mama Chinyere helped me with something today, Nkechi said softly, her voice calm, but carrying an unspoken weight. Kelechi raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. Helped you with what? He asked, his tone neutral but cautious, sensing that there was more to the story than met the eye. Mama Chinyere cleared her throat, a hint of hesitation in her voice. Well, it was a personal favor, she said slowly, glancing at Nkechi. I helped with some laundry. Kelechi's expression froze for a moment, and then he blinked, clearly surprised. Laundry, that's all? He asked, trying to mask his confusion, though he sensed the tension in the room. Nkechi nodded, her eyes meeting his. Yes, but not just ordinary laundry. There's something important you need to know. Mama Chinyere felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped this moment could be handled delicately, but now she realized the full weight of the secret was about to unfold. She didn't know how Kelechi would react. Would he be angry, embarrassed, or worse, would he feel betrayed by her involvement? Kelechi sat down beside Nkechi, taking her hand gently. "Okay, I'm listening," he said, his voice soft, yet edged with concern. "Tell me what's going on." Nkechi took a deep breath, her eyes shimmering with vulnerability. "I've been having unusual symptoms, more than normal pregnancy fatigue. I needed someone I trust to help me check, discreetly. Mama Chinyere helped because I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily." Kelechi's eyes widened slightly, a mix of shock and concern crossing his face. He looked at his mother, then back at his wife. "So, that's why you asked her to help you?" Mama Chinyere nodded slowly, her pride and embarrassment blending with relief. "Yes, son, it was unusual, but I wanted to help her. I didn't understand fully at first, but now I see why she needed me." Kelechi ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the unusual dynamic. I didn't expect this," he admitted quietly, his voice tinged with awe and confusion. "But, I see now. Nkechi, thank you for trusting us. Mama Chinyere, thank you for being there." The room fell into a brief, tense silence. Outside, the city's noises continued unabated, but inside, the household felt like a fragile bubble, holding the weight of unspoken truths and hidden worries. Nkechi smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and anxiety. She knew that the real reason she had asked for such a delicate favor, the reason behind her unusual symptoms, was still a secret, one that would soon shock the family to its core. Mama Chinyere, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, felt a mix of protectiveness and apprehension. She had crossed a personal boundary today, but in doing so, she had become an essential part of a revelation that would forever change the way her family saw her, and each other. And as Kelechi embraced his wife gently, unaware of the full truth, Nkechi felt a small, nervous flutter in her chest. The secret she carried was more than just medical, it was a truth that could shake the very foundation of their household, and she knew the moment of revelation was fast approaching. That night, after dinner, Kelechi had gone to check on some work emails, leaving Nkechi and Mama Chinyere in the quiet living room. The dim glow from the table lamp cast long shadows across the walls, emphasizing the tension that still lingered in the air. Nkechi's mind raced as she tried to figure out the best way to reveal the next part of her secret without alarming anyone unnecessarily. Mama Chinyere, meanwhile, was still processing the day's events. Her hands, which had washed each garment with care, now rested in her lap, slightly trembling. She couldn't shake the thought that something about Nkechi's request was more serious than she had realized. "Nkechi," Mama Chinyere finally said, her voice gentle but firm, "I need to know, what exactly made you so worried? Why did it have to be me?" Nkechi hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Mama, when I went for my last checkup, the doctor noticed something unusual in my urine test. He said it could be harmless, maybe just an infection, but there was a chance it was something more serious. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, and I didn't want Kelechi to panic." Mama Chinyere's eyes widened. "So, you wanted me to, what? Help examine?" Nkechi nodded. "Yes, not in a way that's invasive. I just needed someone I trust to notice any signs, anything abnormal, stains, colors, textures, that I might not see myself. I thought, if it was serious, I could bring it to the doctor immediately." Mama Chinyere took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She felt a mixture of fear, worry, and a protective instinct she hadn't felt in years. "Nkechi, that's a lot to ask," she whispered. "I mean, I've never done anything like that before. But I understand why now." Nkechi's hand reached out to touch her mother-in-law's. "I knew you'd understand, Mama Chinyere. That's why I trusted you. I needed someone who would handle it carefully, without judgment, and you've been perfect." A quiet moment passed between them. The bond that had been tentative, sometimes strained, had deepened in ways neither woman could have anticipated. Mama Chinyere realized that the small pile of garments she had washed earlier wasn't just clothing, it was a symbol of trust, vulnerability, and the hidden struggles of pregnancy. Just then, Kelechi returned from his work desk, sensing the unusually serious atmosphere. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking between the two women. Mama Chinyere nodded slowly, trying to steady her voice. "Yes, everything is fine. Nkechi just needed some support today. That's all." Kelechi hesitated, sensing that there was more to the story, but he decided to trust them for the moment. "All right, if you both say so," he said, though a small furrow of concern appeared on his forehead. As the night wore on, Nkechi felt the baby kick again, stronger this time. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and anxiety washing over her. She had taken a step toward uncovering the truth about her condition, and Mama Chinyere had been a crucial part of that. But the real test was yet to come. The discovery she had hoped to confirm quietly, something medical, something that might explain her unusual symptoms, would soon reveal itself fully. And when it did, the household would be forced to confront a reality far more shocking than anyone had imagined. Mama Chinyere, sitting quietly beside her daughter-in-law, understood that the simple act of washing underwear had become the key to a hidden truth, a truth that could not remain secret for long. She braced herself, knowing that the days ahead would challenge her sense of propriety, her patience, and the very bonds of family she had spent her life protecting. The following morning, the sun had barely risen when Nkechi awoke, feeling unusually tired despite a full night's rest. Mama Chinyere was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, the aroma of fried plantains and steaming tea filling the air. The quiet hum of the neighborhood outside was a stark contrast to the turmoil that quietly simmered inside the house. Nkechi approached her mother-in-law cautiously. "Mama, may I speak with you for a moment?" she asked softly. Mama Chinyere turned, wiping her hands on her apron. "Of course, child. What is it?" Nkechi lowered her gaze, a hint of hesitation in her posture. "Last night, after you helped me with everything, I noticed something unusual. I think it's important we pay attention before Kelechi notices anything." Mama Chinyere's brow furrowed. "Unusual? What do you mean?" Nkechi handed her a small cloth she had discreetly kept from the laundry. "This. I noticed a strange stain on this. Not the usual pregnancy discharge, Mama. Something different. I couldn't tell Kelechi yet. I wanted you to see it first, so you can help me decide what to do." Mama Chinyere took the cloth, her heart skipping a beat. She had seen a lot in her lifetime, illnesses, accidents, and minor family crises, but the delicate intimacy of this moment was unlike anything she had ever faced. She examined it carefully, using her experience and intuition to detect irregularities. Her eyes widened slightly. "Child, this is unusual. We can't ignore this." She looked up at Nkechi, her voice softer, yet firm. "We need to act carefully, but we also need to get a proper medical opinion immediately. Kelechi doesn't need to panic, but we cannot delay." Nkechi nodded, relief and fear mingling in her expression. "I know, Mama Chinyere. That's why I trusted you. You know how to handle delicate matters. I didn't want to overreact, but I also didn't want to miss something important." Mama Chinyere sighed deeply, her protective instincts kicking in. "All right, first, we keep this between us. I will help you get to the doctor without alarming anyone. But we must be prepared for whatever we find." The weight of the situation settled over them. The household, usually filled with laughter and small quarrels, now carried the tension of a secret that could not stay hidden for long. The act that had seemed so simple, the washing of underwear, had become the entry point into a medical mystery that neither woman could ignore. As Nkechi rested on the sofa, Mama Chinyere went about her chores with a new focus. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture careful, as though she were preparing herself for a confrontation with fate itself. The neighborhood carried on as usual outside, blissfully unaware of the storm quietly brewing inside one small home. By mid-morning, Nkechi and Mama Chinyere had made a plan. They would visit the doctor discreetly, ensuring Kelechi remained unaware until they had a clearer understanding of the situation. But deep down, both women sensed that the news, whatever it was, would change their household forever. And as Nkechi felt another small kick from her unborn child, she wondered if the life growing inside her would be the source of joy, or the catalyst for the most shocking revelation her family had ever faced. By late morning, Nkechi and Mama Chinyere arrived quietly at the small, private clinic in their neighborhood. The receptionist greeted them warmly, unaware of the tension between the two women. Mama Chinyere stayed close to Nkechi, her hand resting lightly on her daughter-in-law's shoulder, a silent gesture of support and reassurance. Once inside the consultation room, the doctor, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Drive Adebayo, reviewed Nkechi's medical records carefully. "Nkechi, I see you've been having some unusual symptoms," she began, her tone calm yet serious. "Can you tell me exactly what's been happening?" Nkechi took a deep breath. Doctor, I've noticed unusual discharge and some changes that seem different from normal pregnancy symptoms. I wasn't sure if it was serious, but I wanted to be safe. She hesitated, then added, I also noticed something unusual in my underwear. I brought it to my mother-in-law, Mama Chiniere, to show her discreetly before I came here. Dr. Adebayo's eyes narrowed slightly, indicating she understood the gravity of the situation. All right, let's take a careful look. Mama Chiniere handed over the small cloth, her hands trembling slightly. The doctor examined it meticulously, her expression growing more serious by the second. After a few tense minutes, she looked at both women. This is unusual. It's not a normal pregnancy symptom. We need to run further tests immediately to be sure what's happening. Nkechi's heart pounded in her chest. What could it be, doctor? She whispered, anxiety and fear mixing in her voice. Dr. Adebayo paused. At this point, I cannot say for certain, but there's a possibility of an infection or a hormonal imbalance that requires urgent attention. It's good that you noticed this early. Early detection could make all the difference. Mama Chiniere's eyes softened as she looked at Nkechi. See, child, this is why I insisted we take it seriously. You did the right thing. Nkechi nodded, relief washing over her, though it was mingled with a fresh wave of worry. I'm glad we came, Mama Chiniere. I don't know what I would have done without you. The doctor prepared to run a series of tests, explaining each step in detail. The process was delicate, requiring both patience and precision, but Nkechi trusted drive. Adebayo completely. Meanwhile, Mama Chiniere stayed by her side, offering comforting words and holding her hand. As the tests were conducted, Nkechi and Mama Chiniere shared a quiet moment of reflection. The unusual act of trust from the previous days, the washing of garments, the careful observation, had now led them here, to a potential life-saving revelation. But as the results came back, both women realized that the situation was even more serious than they had imagined. The first shocking truth of Nkechi's condition was about to surface, and it would change the way their family viewed her pregnancy, and the future of their child, forever. Mama Chiniere gripped Nkechi's hand tightly, bracing herself. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, child, she whispered. Nkechi nodded, her mind racing. She had planned carefully, trusted the right person, and taken the first step toward uncovering the truth, but now, there was no turning back. The revelation was coming, and it would shock them all. The air in the clinic was thick with tension. Nkechi sat on the examination bed, her hands tightly clasped together, while Mama Chiniere stood close, her eyes scanning the room nervously. Dr. Adebayo held the test results in her hands, her expression carefully neutral, but her tone carried the gravity of what she was about to say. Nkechi, the doctor began slowly, I've reviewed your tests, and there are some abnormalities that we cannot ignore. Nkechi's heart skipped a beat. Abnormalities, she whispered, her voice trembling. Yes, drive, Adebayo said, placing the papers on the counter. The tests indicate that there is an unusual protein in your urine, which could be a sign of a rare condition during pregnancy. It's not immediately life-threatening, but it requires close monitoring and specific treatment. If ignored, it could seriously affect both you and the baby. Mama Chiniere's hand went instinctively to her mouth. Child, what does this mean? Will she be okay? Will the baby be okay? She asked, turning to the doctor. Dr. Adebayo nodded. With proper care, both mother and child can be fine. But it's critical that we act immediately. The earlier we intervene, the better the outcome. Nkechi felt a wave of relief, tempered by fear. She had suspected something was wrong, but hearing it confirmed was still a shock. She looked at Mama Chiniere, gratitude and anxiety mixed in her gaze. I'm glad I asked for your help, she whispered. If you hadn't noticed, if I hadn't trusted you. Mama Chiniere squeezed her hand gently. Nkechi, you did the right thing. That pile of laundry wasn't just clothing, it was a warning. We acted in time, and that's what matters. The doctor continued, explaining the treatment plan and the precautions necessary to ensure both Nkechi and the baby remained healthy. It involved regular checkups, a strict diet, and monitoring for any changes in her symptoms. Though the situation was serious, it was manageable, with vigilance and care. As they left the clinic, the gravity of the revelation hung over them. The strange request to have Mama Chiniere help with something so personal had seemed bizarre at the time, but now its importance was undeniable. Without that act of trust, the rare condition might have gone unnoticed until it was too late. Back at home, Kelechi was waiting, unaware of the full extent of the discovery. Mama Chinyere and Nkechi exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They would tell him carefully, explaining only what he needed to know to remain calm and supportive. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Nkechi reflected on how quickly life could change. A simple act, something as mundane as laundry, had led to the discovery that might save her life and her baby's. Mama Chinyere watched her daughter-in-law thoughtfully. She had crossed a personal boundary, yes, but in doing so, she had protected the family in ways no one could have anticipated. The bond between them had deepened, strengthened by trust and necessity, and both women knew that the days ahead would test their resilience, but together, they could face anything. Yet even as relief settled over them, a quiet unease lingered. This was only the first shocking revelation. The full truth behind Nkechi's condition, and the strange circumstances that had brought them here, had yet to unfold. And when it did, the family would be forced to confront a reality far more complex and unexpected than anyone could have imagined. That evening, the atmosphere at home was unusually quiet. The smell of dinner lingered in the kitchen, but no one seemed hungry. Kelechi, sensing something was different, finally asked, "Nkechi, Mama, what's going on? You've both been acting strange all day." Nkechi took a deep breath, her hand resting on her belly. Mama Chinyere exchanged a brief, worried glance with her, silently giving her approval. It was time for Kelechi to understand, but they had to be careful not to alarm him unnecessarily. "Kelechi," Nkechi began, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her chest, "there's something unusual with my pregnancy. Something I noticed recently that prompted me to ask Mama Chinyere for help." Kelechi frowned, leaning closer. "Help? With what?" Mama Chinyere spoke up, her tone calm but firm. "It's medical, son. When your wife started showing unusual symptoms, I helped her carefully check for anything abnormal. It was delicate, but necessary. We didn't want to worry you unnecessarily." Kelechi's eyes widened. "Wait, you mean, you helped her with her underwear?" He hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question without embarrassment. Nkechi nodded. "Yes, there was something unusual I noticed. I didn't want to overreact, and I didn't want you to worry, so I asked Mama Chinyere to help me observe before we came to the doctor." Kelechi's jaw tightened, a mix of shock, relief, and awe flashing across his face. You did that, because you suspected something was wrong." "Yes," Nkechi replied softly. "And we discovered it early. The doctor said it's a rare condition, but with careful treatment, both the baby and I can be okay." The room went silent for a moment. Kelechi sat back, processing the revelation. "So, that's why you asked her to do that. Not laziness, not disrespect, but to help save your life and the baby's life." Mama Chinyere nodded, her stern expression softening. "Exactly, son. It may have seemed strange, even improper at first, but it was necessary. I'm glad we acted when we did." Kelechi took a deep breath, his hand resting on his wife's. I can't believe I didn't see it. I was ready to get upset over something that actually saved your life." He smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and gratitude filling him. "Nkechi, thank you for trusting me, and Mama Chinyere. I'm sorry for not understanding sooner." Nkechi squeezed his hand gently. "It's okay. I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't want to worry you unnecessarily. But now you know the truth." Mama Chinyere looked at them both, a quiet satisfaction settling over her. The unusual request, the awkward tension, the personal boundary she had crossed, it had all led to this moment. She realized that sometimes, actions that seem strange or inappropriate on the surface could have life-saving consequences. As the evening wore on, Kelechi, Nkechi, and Mama Chinyere shared a quiet, reflective meal. The tension of the past days began to ease, replaced with a renewed sense of trust, understanding, and family unity. Yet beneath the relief, a small, unspoken thought lingered in Mama Chinyere's mind. This revelation was only the beginning. The rare condition was serious, and careful vigilance would be needed in the days to come. The family had faced one shock, but more challenges, and perhaps more surprises, were still ahead. The following morning, the household was unusually calm. Kelechi was quiet, deep in thought as he prepared breakfast, occasionally glancing at Nkechi with concern and affection. Mama Chinyere moved about the kitchen efficiently, but there was a new gentleness in her movements, a quiet understanding of the fragility and importance of the situation. Nkechi sat at the dining table, a small notebook in front of her, jotting down instructions from Dr. Adebayo, diet plans, medication schedules, and reminders for regular checkups. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her, but she felt a surprising sense of relief. The secret that had caused tension, awkwardness, and anxiety had now been transformed into action and vigilance. Kelechi finally spoke, his voice careful but firm. Nkechi, Mama Chinyere, I know the situation is serious, but we need to face it together. No more hiding things, no more secrets. Mama Chinyere nodded. You're right, son. We acted quickly, and that's what matters. From now on, we'll support each other fully. This family, it's stronger than any challenge. Nkechi smiled faintly, feeling the warmth of their solidarity. Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have managed this alone. The day was spent in preparation and discussion. They organized medical appointments, planned dietary changes, and set up a detailed schedule to monitor Nkechi's health closely. Mama Chinyere offered tips from her years of experience raising children and managing households, while Kelechi focused on emotional support and ensuring their home environment was calm and stress-free. Yet amid the organization and plans, there was also a subtle shift in their relationships. Mama Chinyere's involvement had blurred the traditional boundaries, but in a way that strengthened trust and respect. Kelechi began to see his mother in a new light, not just as a figure of authority, but as an ally and protector. Nkechi felt a deepened connection with her mother-in-law, a bond built on trust, vulnerability, and shared responsibility. By evening, the family gathered in the living room, exhausted but united. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows, and the soft hum of the neighborhood outside reminded them that life continued, despite the personal storm they had weathered. Nkechi placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick gently. "Everything will be okay," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Mama Chinyere and Kelechi exchanged glances, both silently promising to do everything in their power to ensure that the words were true. Mama Chinyere finally spoke, her voice calm but resolute. "Sometimes, life forces us to do things we never imagined. Today, we crossed boundaries we thought were unbreakable. But in doing so, we protected this family. That's what matters." Kelechi nodded, taking both women's hands in his. "We've faced one challenge already. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together, as a family." In that quiet moment, the household felt a fragile peace settle over it. The shocking revelation of Nkechi's condition, the unusual request that had sparked tension and disbelief, and the careful handling of the situation had all led to a deeper understanding, trust, and resilience. And though the days ahead would require vigilance, patience, and courage, the family knew that they had already overcome the first and most critical hurdle. The bonds between them were stronger, their trust unshakable, and their resolve unwavering. For Nkechi, Mama Chinyere, and Kelechi, the lesson was clear: sometimes, the most unexpected and uncomfortable acts, like washing underwear, could become the very actions that save lives and strengthen the family in ways that nothing else could.